Well, it's good to be having as much Star Wars news as we've had in the last 24 hours, and just after the news that Dave Filoni's been promoted to CCO, Chief Creative Officer at Lucasfilm, we now have an exclusive for Daisy Ridley's 2026 Star Wars movie, the one set 15 years after the Rise of Skywalker. This comes to us from Collider.com. The big takeaway: she thinks fans are going to be very excited, but when she was first informed about the story they wanted to tell, it's not one she expected, and it's not one that she thinks fans are going to expect either. And this could be the best sign for the project. Being so different from the sequel trilogy and the story she's worked on before, a wild shake-up, a drastic new direction for the character of Rey could be the best thing they do with Daisy, giving a character a second chance. Let's dive straight into this. In a new interview with Collider's Steve Weintraub for The Marsh King's Daughter, the latest of Daisy's films, she spoke about her surprise appearance at Star Wars Celebration back in April of this year. And this is the exciting bit: as pre-production ramps up, she already knows the plot of the film, and as aforementioned, it took her by surprise. Daisy recalls the last time she spoke with Collider.com, she had not been contacted at the time to reprise her role. But her reaction to the story of this upcoming film is very similar to the way she reacted when she found out the plot of The Last Jedi. Here is the full quote. "I will tell you, Steve," and she's talking about the interviewer, "when I saw you in Park City, I'd not been approached. I was asked not by you, but I was asked something when I was there, and strangely, people were asking me stuff, and I was like, no, I'm not doing another one. Then it all happened after I came back. It was such a nice reception. I was shitting myself before I went on stage, because no one knew I was going to that. No one knew I was going to Celebration, apart from Kathleen Kennedy and a couple of others. The story is really cool. I'm waiting to read a script, because obviously I don't have any other updates. It's not what I expected, but I'm very excited." Wording we've heard before. Do you guys remember the quote from Luke in 2017? "This is not going to go the way you think." It sounds like we might have another movie that's going to subvert our expectations, hopefully in the best way possible. And then she's asked a very crucial question: is this going to be a standalone film, or are we about to witness a Rey trilogy? And the latter may turn out to be the case. Check out what she said. "I know the storyline for one film. That's not to say that's all it is, but that's what I was told about." And with a hint of uncertainty in her voice, she states that she was told this is going to be the next film release, as we suspected. But she qualifies it by saying, quote, "So far I know the story of one film, and I think people will be very excited." And I think what they've really got to do with this is completely blow fans away, obviously in the film itself, but in the teasers, in the marketing, in the trailers. I've already seen a large portion of the fandom say they're not interested in this film, they're not going to spend money to go and see it in the cinema, but what I do know is that curiosity is going to mean that most fans are almost certainly going to check out the trailer. And by the time this releases, it would have been 7 years since the last Star Wars film. They have to knock this out of the park. So maybe Daisy saying this is not what she expected is the best sign. If in terms of tone and structure, it's distancing itself from the Rise of Skywalker and The Force Awakens, could this be the Star Wars movie we've been looking for? I certainly hope so. And so now, my dear friends, we're going to move on to our next subject, and this concerns The Mandalorian Season 2 Episode 8, Chapter 16, the grand finale back in 2020 that blew us all away. That was a moment where the fandom kind of reunited. We were all so excited and shocked, astonished to see the return of Luke in this form. So why am I bringing this up? Because the single issue comic adaptation releases in a couple of months' time, and they have just unveiled one of the variant covers of this extremely special episode. They say never judge a book by its cover, but this is different. We know how great this episode was, the story was phenomenal, that is how you end a Mandalorian season in style. And in my humble opinion, the variant covers tend to be better than the primary ones for Marvel and Dark Horse Star Wars comics, and this is no exception. And this one in particular we need to talk about. The reason it's so captivating is because it looks like a 1990s expanded universe novel cover. The sepia, starry aesthetic, you've got Return of the Jedi era Luke on the right, the Dark Troopers, Grogu, Din, all laid out as if this is going to be one of the next big Zahn books. Obviously it's not, but there's very few times I look at a cover and I say, I've got to have a physical copy of that issue. That is going to be the case with this. I did the same thing for Chapter 4 Sanctuary, and also Chapter 15, one of those variants with Boba, Din, Fennec, was so much more invigorating than cover A, which simply showed us Din Djarin holding his helmet. It's fine, but it's not this. Ooh, I love it. Let me know your thoughts on this down below. And so finally, This is very surprising. Following all of the hoopla last week about the KOTOR remake being supposedly as dead as dog poop, as Jeff Grubb put it, we now have an enormous dose of positivity. BestBinBulletin.com, who have been the best for covering every single update for this game, have now posted this. The game is still in development. It's not dead. We can all do an Ewok celebratory dance. And by the way, that's me endorsing an Ewok celebration, not Best Bin Bulletin. But anyway, here is what they said. Towards the tail end of last week, reliable industry insider Jeff Grubb shared on his podcast Game Mess Mornings that Sony and PlayStation were looking to step away from the game's production and that they wanted, quote, absolutely nothing to do with it. In addition, Grubb said this game, Knights of the Old Republic Remake, is not being worked on right now, just full stop. The game is not being worked on by any studio, before hammering home the lack of development on the title, proclaiming the game was, quote, deader than dog shit. Hey, I said that earlier. After Grubb's comments made headlines over the weekend, the journalist and podcaster returned to YouTube to clarify he heard this all from PlayStation. But Lucasfilm are still very keen to make the game, and that brings us on to today, where another trustworthy video games journalist, Jason Schreier, took to Reset Era to respond to the comments. Schreier said he spoke with two sources at Saber Interactive, and he states the following. Is it alive, and will it ever come out, are two very different questions. And a third is that if it ever does, what is it going to look like? That said, I've talked to two people at Saber who both say they're currently working on it. So he discounts the comments by Grubb, and clarifies it is still being developed. So not all hope is lost. Alright, so to finish off, in other Star Wars gaming updates, LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga was a huge success for TT Games, but at the time, TT said they had no intentions after that game to make any kind of Star Wars follow-up. Well, it turns out Traveller's Tales and LEGO might be starting to part ways due to behind-the-scenes issues such as crunch culture and frustration with the new in-house engine, and they're saying this is going to open the door for other studios to start working on LEGO games. So the future of LEGO Star Wars games has been blown wide open, despite the comments last year. A new developer could do something radically different in terms of the model of LEGO games, not just for Star Wars, but for Marvel, DC, and Disney LEGO as well. LEGO has begun distancing itself from Traveller's Tales. For example, last year, the company chose not to extend its exclusivity agreement with TT Games due to aforementioned problems, including crunch culture. Let's see what the future holds. I personally love LEGO Star Wars, and not just the recent ones, but the OGs, but share your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, my dear friends, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.